Okay. Thanks very much, Em. Hi, everyone. I'm Marty. Nice to meet you. So we've only got 15 minutes together, so might as well make it a comfortable 15 minutes. Oh, and do ask questions as we go. I'll give everyone a few seconds to pick up that Slido link if you haven't already.
Volume.
Volume. All right, volume. We'll start with a dead meme. And update it for 2025. Oh, it's accessible. It's got a title attribute, so you can just hover here. That's cool. But this won't work on mobile, so we'll need to do a custom tooltip. Great. Let's check it out on mobile for real. Oh, it doesn't work that way. Hang on. There we go. All right. All right. Let's see what the accessibility guidelines have to say. Resizing visually rendered text. Oh, it's clipped. We're not resizing it though. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah. All right. So if you think that little skit was a parody, then you probably haven't worked in enterprise long enough. So responsive design has been around for a while. Probably still quite cutting edge in 2010, but by about 2012, 2013, we started to see the light. A lot has happened to web design and front end since then. Designers stopped sending us crusty JPEGs for one, and after a brief stint with Sketch and Zeppelin, the design industry, seemingly all at once, like magic, settled on Figma. And this has been amazing for everyone in front-end web dev. Web designers went from barely out of the print era to full-on component libraries and design systems. And we went from tables to float layouts, floats and PX units to media queries and flexbox and grid and calc and VW units and REMs. And from that to today's completely dynamic CSS custom props driven, all the things, and if you're super duper current, container queries. Yet, even in this modern era, we see stuff like this and this and this. Watch the red bit. That. And this. This is not a problem until you zoom. Now you can't tell if you can scroll. That's an issue. All right. And this is just a regular carousel on an unnamed car website. And we'll zoom in to look. Oh, I just wanted to see the other part of the picture. So that's what happens there. So full disclosure, these sites all actually look great at default zoom. But it just so turns out that when you zoom in on mobile, all the industry's dirty laundry comes out to say hello at once. So obviously the problem is, well, they weren't using Figma for design. That would have fixed everything. And the Storybook component playground and Chromatic for regression testing would have fixed everything else. And Zero Height Design System Doco would have fixed everything else. Just muck around. But we do have a lot of good tooling these days. And to be fair, it does help a lot. Yet somehow it's not quite enough. So where I work, we're cutting across two different automotive brands. And for both of them, we're using Figma, React, Next.js, Storybook, Chromatic. In case you're not familiar with Chromatic, that is a visual regression testing tool, screenshots every one of your Storybook stories for every PR, and it lets you review all the changes. So yeah, we've got all these tools, but we still see funny business coming up. So here's my opinion of where I think the train comes off the rails. Anyway, to my mind, there's two ends of the spectrum where designers communicate their work to us devs. At one end, they give us pictures, examples, snapshots, maybe prototypes. They say, here's what I want, you work out the details. And at the other end, they give us components and systems, a lot more prescriptive. So here's what I want, and here is how I want it to work in as much detail as I know from this designer perspective. The pictures and prototypes approach can be both immensely frustrating and immensely freeing for the developer. Personally, I like this one. It's got that scrappy flying by the seat of your pants feeling, but seat of your pants does not scale well. And big business doesn't like that. So when done well, the components and systems approach brings predictability to the development process and lets you get on with actually delivering business value. But number two done badly can paint you into a corner which the designers never saw coming. Both have tons of room for errors, like the ones we just saw, both. So in my world, designers are using the components and systems approach, so that's what I'm going to go into. Remember I said we work with two different auto brands. Both of them are taking the components and systems route, but only one has a history of designers working very closely with the dev team. So from this, I've noticed two basic rules where the more we apply these rules up front, the easier everything else gets. I'll start with the second rule first. It's important for context. Okay. Rule number two, shared mental model. Aim for a shared mental model. In theory, it's the only rule you'll ever need, but in practice, you'll need rule number one as well. So in a former life, I was a graphic designer, and in the same job, I also did front-end dev at the same time. The great thing about this was everything I designed was probably going to work. And this was because I knew what my design tool could do, I knew what the web could do, and I could map one to the other fairly well. And if I had doubts, I could cover any confidence gaps with prototyping. So that is to say, by sheer coincidence, the designer and the developer had a shared mental model. This isn't the only place I've seen this. The actual shared mental model between multiple people does work as well. Back to our second auto brand team, where designers are working extremely closely with the web dev, with the dev team. So this close collaboration means that only this team is capable of implementing, for example, super composable intrinsic layouts. The reuse value of their component library is insane. These guys have only a single breakpoint in their design system, and they don't always need to use it. They can take a mobile view and put it in a sidebar, and it works on desktop. The other auto brand team can't do that. Those designers aren't even aware of intrinsic layouts as a possibility. They're still struggling to remember to consistently do tablet breakpoints, so we need to take it one step at a time. If you've worked with designers coming from Sketch to Figma, you'll know how hard it was to get those Sketch designers to think in components instead of pages. Today Figma designers may struggle to imagine, for example, having layout as a component or spacing as a component. Or if you're involved in a lot of CMS work like I am, the difference between a React component and a Sitecore component. So these are all individual cases of mismatched mental models. Figma can't do layout components or intrinsic layouts itself, but you can still design for it in Figma if you document what the gap is. Of course, when the tooling more closely matches the target medium, designing for the target medium gets a lot easier. There are some tools out there like UXPin, which enable designers to work with actual React components. And there's another one getting VC at the moment called Subframe, which is doing something quite similar. So today we're relatively lucky. We've got Figma, we've got tools like UXPin coming up, Subframe. Figma has styles that work like CSS classes just for text. Design tokens work a lot like CSS custom properties. Modes work a lot like breakpoints. Great. It even has components that are a lot like React components, and it's just gotten grid, and grid's in beta, and in my opinion, not really suitable for prime time at this stage. Compared to where we were before Figma went mainstream, we are very close to getting really good outcomes here. The tooling is doing a lot of the lead work of giving us a shared mental model, but can't do all of it. To close the gap that remains, we have to do number one. And rule number one is to have the conversation. Figma still lags behind the most basic CSS, surprisingly. So we can't rely on it alone for a shared mental model. So we're quite big on typography in our design system, and Figma doesn't know margins and margin collapse. This is CSS 1.0. It can't model typography spacing properly. It can't do multiple children in a single component slot. So you can't do a reusable layout component in Figma. You have to document. You've got to copy and paste in Figma. No percentage widths, you've got to manually position, or Figma's grid layouts that can only do even splits, no 75-25. You can simulate it. Designers who aren't playing directly with CSS for themselves will be totally unaware what's missing in their tooling, save for maybe their experience on the web. So what do? We've got to help them. If we see the designer can't tell the difference between dark theme and dark mode, we tell them that one is for art direction and the other is for light sensitive eyes, right? If our designer doesn't know why they should be designing for 200 pixel viewport width, we show them Safari iOS with page zoom on. We show them that Google Analytics has no idea about page zoom. If they're using layout guides to set up a grid, we let them know that we have the option to use percentage widths on our end. And we let designers know that we can combine REMS and PX, even in a single design token. They just have to tell us the rules about how they want this. So, no, I'm not going to read it all. Here's a couple of cheat sheets that you can share with your designers. While far from comprehensive, they can certainly help you get the conversation started. So when designers and devs work together and have a shared mental model, when they have the conversation, I'll show you what Figma mockups can look like. Okay, the designer here has modeled responsive behavior completely. We can tell that they're thinking in terms of breakpoints instead of intrinsic layouts, but the breakpoints are fluid, which is pretty good. At the top of the frame, we saw that we supported right down to 280px, that'll come up a bit later, or 150% page zoom on an iPhone 11, 6-year-old phone. We know exactly what is happening on tablet, and we don't have to guess where this behavior begins and ends. It's very clear that every device width fits all of the content. Text wrapping doesn't destroy anything, and the background color on the section containers is full bleed. That's where you've got a background change and the background runs edge to edge. Not sure if it's visible here. It's a bit high contrast, but it is there. Check online. In short, it behaves in detail, just like a developer's mental model. This designer has clearly put time into learning how developers think. I can also see the designer's mental model of the components and how reuse works. This creates a lot of trust and prevents a lot of problems, like putting spacing on the wrong components or having devs second guess whether or not to create a new component. So that's all we have time for from the presentation itself. We might have time for a question or two, or ping me on DDD Slido, and I'll catch up with you there. So do we have any questions for tonight? No?
Now is the time for questions.
Oh, now it's time.
I think you deserve an applause. Let me see. Slido. Well, it's loading. Well, I don't have any questions. Has anybody put a question through? You put a question through, Slido? Okay. Oh, wait. Let me. No. I was just joking. Let me get. You have to speak through here so that people online have the benefit.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for the talk. I love the idea of component and designer-led UI. How do you trick designers into doing it when they don't want to?
You have to. They want to do things that have been previously impossible. They love to make new stuff. So you show them what new stuff they can do. If they're spending all their time just pasting variations of things over and over and over and over, that's very annoying, right? And you make an update. It's very annoying to update it over and over and over. So guys, here's components, update one, bang, 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 right? This kind of thing is quite motivating. Do you have any particular other technology use cases? So for like design token adoption, for example.
No, I just think more in general. I'm not doing front end anymore, but like in the past, I've found a lot of designers. I've found a very rare number of designers that wanted to invest in learning all that stuff. It didn't seem fun. It didn't seem what they wanted to do. It wasn't artsy, that kind of thing. So you're right. It takes a bit of education and maybe showing them what sort of problems it can solve. I guess you need to know enough Figma to be dangerous as well to be able to do that. So
it's help, but even having the conversation, you don't have to know Figma yourself as a dev. You can just ask them, hey, can your tool do X, Y, Z? Let's go through this together. Take a look. And that worked. That worked for us.
Martin, I have a question for you.
Hello.
From Slido.
Thank you.
When building for different device sizes,
Yes.
Do you plan ahead on how to code, or you just do it?
I would. So I've been doing it for quite some time. So these days, I'd probably launch into it. Because our designers give us the multiple breakpoints up front, right? When I'm looking at it, I'll be planning, is this going to be a base first approach? Is it going to be a mobile first approach in code? It might be design mobile first, but often base first is actually cleaner code. So yeah, they'll be planning when it's very sophisticated. So sometimes you'd look like the reuse is obvious, and then it turns out it's not. So then we do a component breakdown. So component breakdown, it's an iterative process. You draw boxes around things, right? You draw a box around the same thing on mobile and tablet and desktop. And you go, does this match? Does this make sense? And that helps a lot, just doing that.
Very good. Any other question in the room? Online, guys, sorry, it has to be Slido. That's the limit, no? But no? Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.